Jonathan Hart sat back in his chair, the glow of his computer screens casting a pale light in the dim room. The late hours had turned into early morning as he monitored the skies through his telescopes, part of his nightly routine as a recluse and astrophysicist living on the outskirts of civilization. Suddenly, a fast-moving blip caught his attention. It wasn't like the usual satellite or meteorite. It was something else entirely. "What in the world?" he murmured to himself, adjusting the controls to track the object as it hurtled toward Earth. As he observed, the object began to lose altitude rapidly, clearly on a collision course. It was heading straight for the dense forests not far from his cabin. Jonathan's curiosity overcame his caution. Grabbing his jacket, he headed out into the chilly night, equipped with a flashlight and his old, reliable Jeep. The drive through the woods was rough, with the path barely lit by the moonlight filtering through the dense canopy above. After what felt like an eternity, he arrived at the crash site. The ground was scorched, trees were uprooted, and in the center of the devastation lay a spacecraft unlike any Jonathan had ever seen. It was sleek, obviously advanced, and emitting a faint humming sound. Cautiously approaching the wreckage, he heard a weak sound coming from inside. "Hello? Is anyone there?" he called out, his voice echoing slightly against the metal hull. The hatch creaked and slowly opened, revealing a figure shrouded in light. It was a woman, her appearance strikingly unusual with luminescent skin and delicate features, dressed in what seemed to be royal regalia. She stumbled out, clearly in pain, and collapsed on the ground. Jonathan rushed to her side, checking for injuries. "Hey, are you okay? Can you hear me?" he asked gently, assessing her condition. The woman looked up at him, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and relief. "Please, help me," she spoke in a clear, melodic voice, her accent unfamiliar. "I am Princess Allery of Elysian. I must seek refuge. They are coming for me." Jonathan, taken aback by her declaration, nodded quickly. "Okay, Princess Allery. You're safe with me for now. Let's get you somewhere secure." He helped her up, supporting her as they made their way back to his Jeep. As they drove, Allery explained her plight. "My world is in turmoil. Factions within the royal court seek to overthrow the lineage, and my spacecraft was sabotaged," she said, her voice trembling slightly from fear and the cold. Jonathan listened intently, his mind racing. He was no stranger to tales of political intrigue, but they were things of books and screens, not his quiet, secluded life. "We'll need to hide you somewhere safe, somewhere off-grid. My cabin should suffice for now," he proposed, a plan forming in his mind. "Thank you, Jonathan Hart. I am in your debt," Allery said, managing a weak smile as they reached his cabin. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the cold woods. As they entered, Jonathan prepared a makeshift bed for her in the living area. "Rest now, Allery. Tomorrow, we can figure out your next steps," he suggested, covering her with a blanket. Allery nodded, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "I am indeed fortunate to have found such kindness on this strange planet," she murmured before drifting off to sleep. Jonathan watched over her as the first light of dawn crept through the windows. He knew that life as he knew it had just changed forever. Not only had he found a new friend from the stars, but together, they would have to navigate the perilous waters of interstellar politics right from his once peaceful mountain retreat. Morning light filtered through the windows of Jonathan's cabin, casting long shadows on the wooden floor. Allery stirred on the makeshift bed, her eyes fluttering open to the unfamiliar surroundings. Jonathan, who had been quietly observing her from his desk, put aside his work and approached her with a warm mug in his hand. "Good morning, Allery. How do you feel?" he asked, handing her the mug filled with steaming herbal tea. "Better, thank you," she replied, her voice still carrying a hint of weariness. "This drink, it's soothing. It's chamomile tea. Humans find it relaxing," Jonathan explained, pulling up a chair beside her. "We need to plan your next steps. You can stay here as long as you need, but we should think about what you want to do long-term." Allery sipped her tea, considering his words. "I appreciate your hospitality, Jonathan. I must understand this world better if I am to remain undetected. Can you teach me?" "Of course," Jonathan agreed, his mind already ticking through the basics she would need to know. We'll start with some human customs and history. It might help you blend in more easily. The next few days were filled with lessons. Jonathan introduced Allery to various aspects of human life, from language and food to cultural norms and technology. Allery was a quick study, absorbing everything with an eagerness that impressed him. During one of their sessions, Jonathan's friend, Michael, a biologist and occasional hiking buddy, stopped by the cabin. Michael was broad-shouldered and jovial, known for his curiosity and good humor. "Jonathan, I thought I'd drop in. Who's this?" Michael asked, his eyebrows rising in surprise as he noticed Allery. "This is Allery," Jonathan introduced, quickly adding, "She's from abroad. A long way abroad." "Pleased to meet you, Allery," Michael said, extending his hand in a friendly gesture. Allery looked at Jonathan, who nodded, showing her to shake Michael's hand. "Pleased to meet you too, Michael," she replied, mimicking human pleasantries she had just learned. Michael, noticing her accent and the slightly formal way she spoke, grinned. "Abroad? Huh? Which part?" "You have an interesting accent." "Very far east," Jonathan interjected, giving Michael a look that hinted there was more to the story. Michael, catching on that this was a topic to be discussed privately, changed the subject. "So, what brings you to our neck of the woods, Allery?" he asked, making conversation. "I am here to learn about your culture and ways," Allery answered truthfully, her gaze steady. "That's fantastic. There's a lot to see. Maybe we can show you around, get you familiar with the area," Michael suggested enthusiastically. Over the next week, the three of them spent time exploring the local town and the surrounding nature. Michael taught Allery about Earth's biology and ecosystems, which fascinated her with their diversity compared to her home world. Jonathan took care of explaining social interactions and human technology, which Allery absorbed with keen interest. One evening, as they sat by a campfire outside the cabin, Michael shared stories of his travels around the world, each tale filled with humor and mishaps. Allery listened intently, her laughter mingling with the crackling of the fire. "It's incredible," Allery said, looking up at the stars. "Your world is so vibrant, so full of life, and yet so different from mine." "It's all about perspective," Michael said. "We find new worlds fascinating, just as you find ours. It's what makes the universe so interesting." Jonathan nodded in agreement. "And now that you're part of this world, Allery, we'll make sure you have all the help you need to feel at home." Allery smiled, warmed by the camaraderie and support. "Thank you, both of you. I believe I am starting to feel at home already." As the fire dwindled to embers, the trio sat in comfortable silence, each lost in thoughts of the vast and mysterious universe that had brought them together under the starry sky. Over the next several weeks, Jonathan and Michael continued to introduce Allery to the intricacies of human life. Their days were filled with structured lessons and spontaneous teaching moments, ranging from mundane tasks to complex societal norms. One afternoon, the trio gathered in the living room with several books and devices spread out before them. The focus of today's lesson was human communication, not just language, but the subtleties of gestures and expressions. "All right, Allery," Jonathan began, picking up a book on body language. "Humans say a lot without words. For instance, if someone crosses their arms like this," he demonstrated, folding his arms tightly, "it might mean they're defensive or uncomfortable." Allery mimicked the gesture, her brows furrowing as she contemplated the nonverbal cue. In elision, this might signify contemplation. "It's fascinating how different our expressions can be," Michael chimed in. "Yeah, and if you see someone tapping their foot rapidly, it usually means they're impatient or anxious." He tapped his own foot for emphasis, causing Allery to laugh softly. "I've noticed you do that, Michael, during our nature walks when Jonathan stops to lecture us on stars," she teased. "Caught." Michael grinned sheepishly. "Guilty as charged. I do get a bit antsy." Switching to a more serious tone, Jonathan pointed at the smartphone on the table. "Now, let's talk about digital communication. A lot happens here." He picked up the device, showing Allery various messaging apps. People can talk, send pictures, even run their businesses through this little gadget. Fascinated, Allery took the smartphone, experimenting by swiping through the interface. "It's like holding a small piece of your world right in my hand," That's a good way to put it, Jonathan agreed. It's also a lifeline for many. It connects us, sometimes in good ways, sometimes not. Their discussion was interrupted by a knock on the door. Jonathan went to answer it, returning with a neighbor, Tom, a middle-aged man with a friendly demeanor, known for his community work. "Hey, Jonathan, I heard you had visitors," Tom said, smiling at Allery and Michael. "Just wanted to drop off some of the harvest from my garden." "Thank you, Tom," Jonathan replied as Tom handed over a basket filled with vegetables. "This is Allery. She's staying with us for a while." "Pleased to meet you," Tom said, turning to Allery with a warm handshake. "Hope you're finding our little community welcoming." "Very much so," Allery responded, her tone gracious. "Your generosity is very apparent. Would you like to join us for dinner tonight, Tom?" Jonathan offered. "We'd love to have you." "Sure, I'd be delighted," Tom accepted cheerfully. As the sun began to set, Jonathan and Michael showed Allery how to prepare a simple human meal. They chopped vegetables while discussing various cooking techniques. Tom contributed stories about local food customs, making Allery laugh with anecdotes about past community cookouts. During dinner, the conversation flowed easily. Allery asked Tom about community life, and he explained the importance of supporting each other, especially in a small town. "It's about giving and taking," Tom explained. "We look out for each other here. If someone's in need, we try to help out." "That's a beautiful way to live," Allery remarked, clearly touched. "It's not so different from some of the ideals of Elysian." As the evening wound down, Tom thanked them for the hospitality. "You're quite the learner, Allery. You fit right in." Allery smiled, a look of contentment crossing her face. "Thanks to my wonderful teachers," she said, glancing at Jonathan and Michael. After Tom left, the trio cleaned up together. "I think you're getting a handle on humanity quite well," Jonathan said, proud of her progress. "Yes, but I have much to learn still," Allery replied humbly. "Each day is enlightening." As they finished up, Michael clapped a hand on Jonathan's shoulder. "You know, we might end up learning as much from her as she does from us." Jonathan nodded, the truth of Michael's words resonating deeply. "I believe we already have." Several weeks had passed since Allery first came to live with Jonathan in his mountain cabin. The days grew shorter as winter approached, and the cabin became a warm refuge from the cold. Michael continued to visit often, and the trio spent many evenings sharing stories and learning from each other. One crisp morning, Jonathan and Michael decided to take Allery hiking in the nearby forest to show her the winter changes in the local flora and fauna. Bundled up in warm clothes, they trudged through the light snow, their breath visible in the cold air. "See how the trees have lost their leaves?" Michael pointed out, breaking a small, icy branch off a nearby bush. "It helps them conserve water during the winter." Allery, fascinated, touched the frost-covered leaves gently. "It's so different from Elysian. Our flora is adapted to retain its vitality year-round, thanks to our planet's stable climate. As beautiful as it is, it does make survival tougher for the wildlife here," Jonathan added, leading the way along the path. "Animals have to adapt to the seasons just like the plants." They continued their hike, with Michael explaining tracks and signs of various animals. Allery listened intently, her eyes scanning the surroundings as she absorbed the information. After several hours, they returned to the cabin, cheeks flushed from the cold. Jonathan stoked the fireplace while Allery and Michael started preparing hot drinks for everyone. As they sat around the fire with their cocoa, Jonathan looked over at Allery. "You seem to have adjusted well to our winters here. How are you feeling about everything?" Allery smiled, the warmth from the fire reflecting in her eyes. "I am more comfortable than I ever expected to be in such a strange new environment. Thanks to both of you." Michael raised his cup. "Here's to new friends and new worlds." They clinked cups, the sound mingling with the crackling of the fire. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, with each sharing tales of their childhoods and the misadventures they had experienced. As the evening wore on, Jonathan noticed Allery's gaze lingering on the family photos on the mantelpiece. "Those are pictures of my family," he explained, joining her by the fireplace. "That's my mom and dad, and my 2 sisters. Family seems very important in human culture," Allery remarked, studying the photos with interest. "It is," Jonathan agreed. Just like in any culture, I suppose. They're the ones who make you feel grounded, give you a sense of belonging. Do you miss them? Allery asked softly, sensing a hint of nostalgia in his voice. Every day, Jonathan admitted, his voice a mix of sadness and fondness. But having you and Michael around, it helps. It feels like family. Allery placed a hand on his arm, her expression empathetic. I understand that feeling. I miss my family too. Even though returning is not possible for me. Jonathan looked at her, a new understanding dawning between them. Then we'll just have to make our own family right here, won't we? Allery nodded, her eyes bright. I would like that very much. Michael, who had been quietly listening, joined in. Well, then it's settled. We're all family now. The mood lightened, and they spent the rest of the night playing board games and chatting, the cabin filled with laughter and the warmth of newfound kinship. It was a simple night, but for Allery, it was a profound step towards feeling truly at home on Earth. As they eventually said their goodnights, she felt a sense of belonging that had been absent since her arrival, a feeling that she was no longer just a visitor from another world, but a part of this one. As the weeks turned into months, the bond between Jonathan and Allery deepened. Their days were filled with shared experiences and long discussions about everything from human politics to the mysteries of the universe. One clear night, after a particularly lively discussion on the philosophical differences between their cultures, they found themselves walking in the light of a full moon, the chill in the air making their breath visible. Jonathan stopped by the edge of the lake, the moonlight shimmering on the water. He looked over at Allery, who was watching the sky. It's beautiful, isn't it? The way the light reflects off the surface. Allery turned to him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. It is. Your world has such stark beauty. It's very different from Elysian, but I've grown to love it. Jonathan felt a pull in his heart as he looked at her, the alien princess who had become so dear to him. Allery, he hesitated, unsure how to express the complex feelings he'd been harboring. Allery stepped closer, sensing his turmoil. Jonathan, these months with you, they've changed me. I feel a connection to you, to this planet. It's as if I was meant to be here. Encouraged by her words, Jonathan took a deep breath. Allery, I feel the same. You've brought light into my life and He trailed off, unsure how to continue. Allery reached out, placing a hand on his cheek. Jonathan, I've learned much about human emotions, about love. I feel that with you. It's powerful, and I don't want to ignore it anymore. Moved by her directness, Jonathan took her hand in his. Neither do I, Allery. I think I'm falling in love with you. The air seemed to still around them, the only sound the gentle lapping of the water against the shore. Allery leaned in, her voice a whisper, human. Own my pure body. It was an invitation, one filled with trust and desire. Jonathan's heart raced as he pulled her closer. Their lips met in a gentle, exploring kiss that soon deepened with passion. As they kissed, Jonathan felt a connection that went beyond words, a binding of two souls from different worlds. Slowly, they made their way back to the cabin, hand in hand, each kiss and touch a discovery of mutual desire and affection. Inside, by the warmth of the fireplace, they continued to explore each other. Jonathan was gentle, guided by the trust Allery placed in him, their movements a dance of newfound love and deep connection. As they lay together, wrapped in each other's arms, Jonathan stroked her hair, whispering words of love and commitment. Allery responded in her language, her words soft and filled with emotion. The night deepened around them, but within the cabin, there was a glow of warmth and love. They talked about what this meant, about the future. What happens next? Allery asked, her voice tinged with worry. Jonathan kissed her forehead. We figure it out together. No matter what, I'm here. We're in this together, Allery. As they drifted to sleep, entwined in each other's arms, the challenges ahead seemed less daunting. With each other's presence, they felt complete, a union of two spirits from across the cosmos, bound by love. As autumn faded into winter, the bond between Jonathan and Allery grew stronger, deepened by their shared experiences and burgeoning love. They spent their days exploring the complexities of their different cultures, finding joy in their similarities and learning from their differences. One frosty morning, while they sat by the fireplace, wrapped in blankets, Jonathan introduced Allery to a classic human pastime: chess. This game is a lot about strategy and foresight, something I think you'll excel at given your background, Jonathan explained as he set up the chessboard between them. Allery studied the pieces with curiosity. It's a battle of wits then? Much like the strategic games we have in Elysian, though those are a bit more literal. As they played, Jonathan marveled at how quickly Allery picked up the rules and tactics. "You're a natural," he said with a smile, moving his knight. Allery chuckled, countering his move with a swift check. "Maybe I am. Or perhaps it's the excellent teacher I have." Their game continued with playful banter, the room filled with laughter and the crackling of the fire. It wasn't just chess that they shared. Day by day, they exchanged knowledge, Jonathan teaching Allery about Earth's scientific achievements and Allery recounting the wonders of Elysian's technology and culture. One evening, as they looked at stargazing apps on Jonathan's tablet, Allery pointed to a faint star on the screen. "That's near where Elysian is located," she explained, her finger tracing the constellations. Jonathan looked on, fascinated. "It's incredible to think about how vast the universe is, and yet here we are together. It makes me feel both insignificant and incredibly lucky at the same time." Allery leaned her head against his shoulder. "I feel the same. To have found you among the countless stars, it must be fate." Their conversations often lasted late into the night, each finding comfort in the other's presence. One night, as snow gently fell outside, blanketing the world in white, Jonathan and Allery were deep in discussion about the possibility of integrating some of Elysian's sustainable technologies on Earth. "You could really make a difference here," Jonathan said earnestly, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Your knowledge could help us solve so many environmental issues." Allery pondered the thought. "It's an enticing idea. I would love to contribute, to give back to this world that has welcomed me so warmly." "Let's draft a plan, then," Jonathan suggested. "We could start small, maybe with a community project, and see where it goes from there." Motivated by the idea, they spent the next few days outlining a proposal for a sustainable community garden, utilizing techniques from Elysian to improve crop yields and reduce water usage. Jonathan's friend, Michael, who had a background in environmental science, was brought in to help refine their ideas. "Jonathan told me about your plans," Michael said as they gathered in the cabin to discuss the project. "I'm impressed, Allery. It's ambitious and genuinely feasible." With Michael's input, they fine-tuned their proposal. Allery was quick to understand the scientific terms, relating them to her own knowledge from Elysian. As they worked, the chemistry between Jonathan and Allery was apparent, their easy collaboration a sign of their deep connection. Michael watched them with a knowing smile. "You two are quite the team," he remarked one afternoon, causing both Jonathan and Allery to blush slightly. The project was just the beginning. As they planned for the future, their lives intertwined further, each day strengthening the bond that had blossomed in the most unlikely of circumstances. Their love, rooted in mutual respect and admiration, grew as they envisioned a future together, not just as lovers, but as partners in a shared mission to better their world. In the heart of winter, as the project took shape and their relationship deepened, Jonathan and Allery faced a new challenge. One cold morning, while reviewing the final details of their community garden proposal, a message arrived for Allery from Elysian. A digital communique that appeared on her hidden communicator, its screen flickering with urgent symbols. Jonathan noticed Allery's sudden tension. "What's wrong?" he asked, observing her troubled expression as she read the message. "It's from my home," Allery replied, her voice tight with concern. "There's been a shift in the political landscape. They're urging me to return." Jonathan's heart sank. "Do you have to go back?" he asked, the thought of her leaving filling him with dread. I don't know yet. This message, it's from my loyalists. They believe with the new changes, I could lead a peaceful reform. But it's dangerous," she explained, her fingers trembling slightly as she put the device down. Seeing her distress, Jonathan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But let's think this through carefully." They decided to discuss the situation with Michael, who had become a trusted confidant. Later that day, The three of them sat around the fireplace, the warmth a stark contrast to the chilling dilemma. Michael listened intently as Allery recounted the details from the message. It sounds like you have a chance to make a significant impact back home, but at what cost? He pointed out, always the pragmatist. Allery nodded, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames. I know. My return could either be a beacon of change, or it could plunge me into danger. And leaving Earth would mean leaving Jonathan. Jonathan felt a tightness in his chest. Isn't there another way? Could your allies handle the situation without you physically being there? It's complicated, Allery sighed. My presence could unify the various factions, give them the leader they need to secure peace. It's a heavy burden. Let's consider a longer-term plan, Michael suggested. Maybe you could establish a way to assist from here, at least initially. We have the technology to communicate across the stars, right? You could lead from afar, test the waters. Allery considered this, turning the idea over in her mind. That might work. It would allow me to stay and work on our project here, maintaining a balance between my duties to Elysian and my life here with Jonathan. The next few days were spent setting up a secure communication link to Elysian. Jonathan worked tirelessly, using all his expertise to ensure that Allery could send encrypted messages that would reach her planet without interception. As they worked together, the bond between them solidified further. The crisis brought them closer, their partnership deepening as they tackled each technical challenge. Finally, after several tests, they established a stable link. Allery sent her first message, proposing her remote leadership model to her supporters on Elysian. The waiting period that followed was tense, with each passing day stretching long with anticipation. When the response finally came, it was positive. Her allies were willing to support her unconventional method of ruling from afar. Relief washed over Allery, and she turned to Jonathan, her eyes shining with tears of relief and gratitude. This is our victory, she said, embracing him tightly. Thank you for standing by me through this, for making it possible to hold on to both parts of my life. Jonathan held her, feeling a profound sense of relief and happiness. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you, Allery. We're in this together, remember? As they celebrated with Michael that evening, the sense of accomplishment was palpable. They had not only secured Allery's leadership, but also preserved their future together on Earth. Here's to overcoming the impossible, Michael toasted, raising his glass. To us, and to futures forged together, Allery added, her smile bright. The decision to stay on Earth with Jonathan while leading her people from afar marked a new chapter for Allery, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of making a difference both on her home planet and her new home. The new year brought with it a gentle thaw, and with the snow melting around Jonathan's cabin, it seemed a fitting metaphor for the new beginnings that lay ahead for both him and Allery. The success of Allery's remote governance began to show promising results, easing some of her burdens, yet the question of her permanent stay on Earth remained delicately poised. One serene evening, while they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Allery broached the subject that had been lingering unspoken between them. Jonathan, I've been leading from here for a while now, and it's working, but I know that part of me will always belong to Elysian. Yet, another, equally strong part now belongs here, with you. Jonathan took her hand, his voice soft but firm. I know, Allery, and whatever decision you make about where you want to be, I'll support you. I just want you to be happy. Allery sighed, her eyes reflecting the hues of the dusk sky. I've thought about this a lot, and my heart tells me I'm already home. Here, with you. If my people need me, I'll be there for them. But this, she gestured around, this is my life now. With you. Jonathan's heart swelled with emotion. And you have my whole heart, Allery. Earth's gained a brilliant mind and a beautiful soul because you chose to stay. The next day, they invited Michael over to share the news. As Michael approached the cabin, he could sense the air of celebration. Jonathan greeted him with a broad smile, clapping him on the back as he stepped onto the porch. Michael, come in. We have great news, Jonathan announced, leading him inside where Allery was setting out a festive spread. What's the occasion? Michael asked, looking between them curiously. Allery beamed. I've decided to stay on Earth permanently. My leadership from here has stabilized, and my heart is truly in two places, But I am choosing this life with Jonathan. That's fantastic, Michael exclaimed, his face lighting up with genuine joy. I must say, I'm not surprised. It's clear how much you two mean to each other. They spent the evening discussing Allery's future role in the expansion of their environmental project, which had begun to attract local interest. Jonathan shared their plans to involve the community more, leveraging Allery's knowledge to create sustainable solutions for other local issues. So, what's the next step for our project? Michael queried, genuinely interested in taking their initiative to the next level. Jonathan unfolded a map across the table, pointing to several areas. We're looking at these sites for possible expansion. The community's enthusiastic, and with Allery's insights, we think we can really make an impact. Allery added, and I'm starting a series of workshops. It's time to share what I know, not just about Elysian, but about integrating with Earth's ecosystems without harm. Michael nodded approvingly. You're making history here, both of you. It's groundbreaking work. The discussion went on late into the night, with plans made and tasks assigned. They were not just planning a project, they were building a future, one that included everyone at that table. As Michael left, he turned to them from the doorway. You two are proof that sometimes, the best families are the ones we make ourselves. I'm proud to be part of yours. Jonathan and Allery stood at the door, watching him go, their hands intertwined. Turning to look at each other, they both knew that the challenges ahead were nothing compared to the strength of the bond they had forged. Together, they would navigate whatever came their way, connected not just by love, but by a shared vision of a better world. Here's to our future, Allery, Jonathan said, lifting her hand to his lips. To our future, she echoed, her eyes sparkling with shared dreams and unspoken promises.